Is Andy Burnham, the King of the North, about to topple Keir Starmer as leader of the Labour Party? Now, the Mayor of Greater Manchester is very clearly on manoeuvres, and so are Labour MPs who are utterly despairing of this big flaming motorway pile-up which calls itself a government. That's not just because, by the way, of the calamitous record of his government in office. That's bad enough. There's also a scandal enveloping Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeny, who we should consider to be the real Prime Minister, yet the media has helped conspire to hide him from scrutiny. We're going to talk about this emerging development, let's put it that way. Now, Andy Burnham has publicly declared that Labour MPs are privately urging him to challenge Starmer to take the top job. And that's not entirely straightforward because Burnham stood down as a Labour MP back in 2017 in order to become Mayor of Greater Manchester. Now, Starmer definitely fears Burnham. I can tell you as a fact that when Labour lost the Hartlepool by-election back in May 2021 and the party leadership was in deep trouble at the time, Starmer privately remarked, "Thank God Andy isn't on the back benches," as in, otherwise he would challenge me and win. Now, I want to talk about Burnham's prospects and what he's been saying in advance of Labour Party conference, and in line with tradition, we will be there filming our annual video next week. First, a little potted history for you. Burnham was someone very much associated with the Blairite faction of the Labour Party in his younger years. When he stood for leader of the Labour Party in 2010, that was his pitch. That's where he was coming from. Under Ed Miliband's leadership, Ed Miliband won in 2010, he became Shadow Health Secretary and shifted more towards what is often called soft left. He won a lot of support from the grassroots by opposing Tory privatisation and cuts. Obviously, the NHS is Labour's most treasured achievement. He can kind of rub the belly of Labour supporters by taking a strong stand. After Labour's defeat in 2015, he was seen as the overwhelming frontrunner, but then veered off again towards a Blairite pitch, doing his leadership launch at an accountancy firm, going on about business and all the rest of it. Did not go down well. His campaign manager was a particularly unpleasant Labour right-winger, I'd put it that way. That's the context in which Jeremy Corbyn stood and won massive support for straight talking, having a clear vision, that kind of thing. The right-wing faction of Labour were totally ideologically bankrupt. They had no ideas at all. Their cupboard was empty. And Corbyn was talking about an alternative to austerity, demanding the wealthy paid fair taxes, public ownership, that kind of thing. It won a mass audience. He won, Burnham sank. So Burnham went off to become Greater Manchester Mayor. Unquestionably, he's been a popular triumph. He's won huge victories in the elections there. He's promoted popular and successful policies like public ownership of buses, free travel for 16 to 18s, cheaper integrated travel, that sort of thing. Starmer's team, in the meanwhile, lied through their teeth to deceive the Labour membership into voting for their front man by promising public ownership, investment, taxing the rich, scrapping tuition fees, defending the welfare state, defending migrants' rights, promoting peace and justice abroad. As you can hear as I go through it, the opposite of what he went on to do. He reneged on all of his promises. His team then tried to drive out anyone in the party who believed in the very thing Starmer claimed to believe in when he stood for leader. Now, Starmer and his team were apologists for Israel's genocide in opposition and continued to arm it in government, as well as refusing to impose sweeping sanctions. Starmer's faction backed themselves into a corner during the general election by adopting totally unnecessary, stringent Tory fiscal rules and ruling out hiking taxes on the rich. They then sucked demand out of the economy by talking about a black hole they needed to fill. And then because of their self-defeating tax policy, not increasing good progressive taxes on the rich, they ended up hiking the worst possible tax in the circumstances: national insurance, employers' contributions. That means higher prices, as we're seeing, as well as less people being hired. Now, instead of taxing the booming rich, they decided to kick elderly people by scrapping the universal winter fuel payment. Yeah, I'm glad grannies finally got a beating. Yeah, they were, I think, the real cause of all our problems. Similarly, children, they kept the Tory two-child benefit cap. They sought to drive hundreds of thousands of disabled people into poverty. Again, really, a Labour government here taking the fight to those who really need to have a fight taken to them. That blew up in their faces. Now, because of their love for the rich and for power for its own sake, with all its trappings, the government became embroiled in scandals over freebies from wealthy donors. Because Starmer's goons are obsessed with Tony Blair, they decided to appoint Peter Mandelson as UK ambassador to the US. Despite it being extremely obvious, he was totally unsuitable for the job, given his ties to the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, which they knew about, and then that blew up in their faces. We've seen Angela Rayner, the deputy leader, resign over a stamp duty scandal. We've seen a leading advisor, Paul Ovenden, resign over disgusting sexualising text message about Diane Abbott, the first black female MP ever elected, who's faced disgusting treatment in the Labour Party, rampant racism and sexism combined. Unable to actually address people's problems, the government instead keeps trying to raid the rhetoric and policies of Nigel Farage. As we've seen elsewhere, when mainstream parties adopt this strategy, they just legitimise the radical right and shift political conversation onto their turf, exactly where the radical right want to be. That's what happened here. Now, Starmer's goons have ruled through fear, threatening anyone who steps out of line with being purged. For example, several Labour MPs were suspended when they had the temerity to vote against Tory benefit cuts, which drive children into poverty and squalor. What is the point of a Labour Party which does that? Zero. Earlier this year, a book revealed that Starmer's advisors were briefing journalists that Starmer wasn't really in charge, that he thought he was driving the train, but they'd put him in front of the driverless district light railway. Just by the way, these people are horrible. Obviously, I'm not a fan of Starmer, but like, how messed up are these people that they're in politics and with it just after winning election, they go around briefing journalists that their boss is a total loser. Like, he's just some total useful idiot who doesn't know really what's going on. They're really in charge because he's such a clown. It's so weird. They are awful, by the way. The Labour right are the worst people you meet in politics. I'm just going to say it. They are horrible people, and they're horrible to each other. They're just grim, horrible people. Now, the real person running the show, running the country, is Morgan McSweeny, Starmer's chief of staff, who was the driving force behind his totally deceitful leadership campaign. Now, there's a new scandal brewing, which is all based around how these people sought to destroy Corbynism and the Labour left. They thought they were oh so clever. I always thought their original sin would come and destroy them in the end. A new upcoming book by Paul Holden, a brilliant author and writer, called The Fraud, Keir Starmer, Morgan McSweeny in a Crisis of British Democracy, has a massive treasure trove of revelation based on lots of communication, which has come to light between all these people. Now, from the book has emerged massive questions about how Morgan McSweeny ran a supposed think tank called Labour Together, which was really plotting about how to get rid of Corbyn and settled on Starmer as their frontman, and how it was funded with £700,000 of secret donations, which were only declared long after they were supposed to legally be declared. Months after Starmer became leader, they said this was an admin error. Massive questions about the role of this think tank in the campaign of Keir Starmer and why that wasn't declared as, again, per the rules, the law, with Starmer's team claiming it played no role in the campaign, despite the evidence showing that they used direct material in that campaign from the think tank, so-called think tank. Look, there's loads more to come on there. Stay tuned. Only 14 months after winning a landslide, albeit only on a third of the vote and the lowest turnout in democratic history, 72% of the population approve of the government. So, I mean, is it any wonder, frankly? I mean, just guess how many approve? 11%. I'd love to meet them. Why are you happy with the government? I mean, it's just 1 in 10 people. So if you had to just pluck 10 people out of random in the country, the odds are one person would go, yeah, I like them. I don't know. Maybe they're just not paying attention to anything, or maybe they're just doing very well, unlike most people. Now, Starmer's own approval rating is minus 50. Yeah, he's sort of competing with Collar and the bubonic plague at this point. More than half of Brits want Starmer to resign. No government has sunk so far, so fast in our democratic history. So that's where Andy Burnham and his lovely eyelashes come in. In interviews with the New Statesman and the Telegraph, he calls for public ownership of utilities, higher council tax on expensive homes, borrowing to invest in council homes, cutting tax on low earners and increasing it on high earners. All things, of course, I'd sign up to. We'll come on to this because you might think, am I here cheerleading for Burnham? We'll come on to that. He also says we've got to go beyond this thing of being hawks to the bond markets, says the government rules with the climate of fear, does, and doesn't rule out working with Jeremy Corbyn. Now, the government has been briefing against him, saying he had a Boris-sized ego but without the strategic thought. Do you have no self-awareness? Sorry, I don't know. If I was in charge of this government, I don't think I'd be questioning other people's strategic thought. Do you think you're master strategists? I know a lot of you think you're in the West Wing, but you know, this government, the soundtrack is. I mean, it's a joke. It's not a funny joke. It's awful what you're doing, but guys, just no self-awareness at all. You are strategically catastrophic. There's never been such a strategically catastrophic government in history, I would say. What's more strategically catastrophic? Liz Truss, probably. That's your lot. All I have to say is, given your own proven record of strategic genius, shut up. Interestingly, polling shows Labour would hypothetically retake a lead over Reform if Burnham is leader, though hypothetical polling is very flawed. Certainly, you think Burnham is Labour's best bet to combat Farage, to stop Labour bleeding both to the left and to Reform. But what's best for Labour and what's best for the awful people who run the Labour Party? Not the same thing. So what do I think of it all? I think Andy Burnham's a really nice guy, by the way. Times I've met with him, that's always come across. That's not the deal breaker. Obviously, you don't want someone to become leader just because of how nice they are. I think there are big question marks about whether Starmer's goons would ever let him stand as a Labour MP in the first place, because they know he just then challenge the leader and get rid of them all. So why would they do that? A Labour MP would also need to stand down to trigger a by-election. It'd have to be in a seat where Burnham was very confident of not being defeated by Reform. That would be humiliating, wouldn't it? Then my questions would centre on Burnham's past of shifting political allegiances. Has he definitely changed? Or will he just shift around? The danger is he would come under huge political pressure from a parliamentary party full of soulless right-wing hacks, as well as the Conservatives and Farage and the business elite. He mentions pressure from the bond markets. He needs a strategy to deal with that. What is it? Who would he make Chancellor of the Exchequer who would stick to a clear, coherent agenda? Because most Labour MPs are duds. They're not good, not competent. They're not very bright. They don't have interesting ideas. They're just automatons. So, there's not that. I mean, who could he put in? The best I could think of on those terms is Ed Miliband, but I'm just trying to imagine doing that. What would his foreign policy be? Would he end British complicity in Israel's genocide and more broadly the persecution of the Palestinian people? Now, look, I left the Labour Party a year ago and my mental health has vastly improved ever since. I want the left to get their act together. I will back a pact between the Green Party and whatever your party becomes. Obviously, I've been very depressed by the whole saga with Jeremy Corbyn as our Sultana. I hope things will improve and then they'll, I just want to, I'm a floating voter. I'm in an open relationship now. I've ended my marriage with the Labour Party. I'm sleeping around, guys. No, what I mean is that, I will just vote pragmatically based on which are the best left candidates in the best seats to win. That's what I care about. I don't really care, if I'm honest, about what the formation is. I just want the left to get its act together to support on, domestic policies, public ownership, taxing the rich, workers' rights, standing up for minorities, and abroad, peace, justice, not facilitating genocide. It's pretty basic red lines. So my view is whatever happens with Labour, we need a strong left. I don't think Labour, and particularly its MPs, can be trusted. I know they can't be trusted. But I will be watching what happens to the leadership and watching a lot of popcorn. Do wait for our video next week. I'll be at Labour Party conference talking to Labour MPs and Labour members. Do send your ideas about what you'd like to ask. We'll see how many of them agree to talk to me every year. It's lower numbers of people who want to speak, but I will be there running around with a microphone. So I look forward to that. Help us as we keep doing those videos at patreon.com/OHS84. You keep us on the road. You make us do all of these things. That's how we do it. It comes, got very skilled people doing all this, not me. I'm just talking to a camera. So yes, and when I finish my book, The Fall of the West, we'll be very much back on the ball, doing far more videos, far more documentaries, all that kind of stuff. I need to finish my book, but I think we're doing all right, despite that. So like and subscribe, leave your comments. Do share the video. I'll speak to you in a bit.